The objective, and this is an important point, as per the two leaders, Trump and Netanyahu, the objective is regime change. Plain and simple. It is to overthrow the Iranian regime, to help the Iranian people reclaim their freedom.
Today is Saturday, February 28th. This is Boundless Insights, and I'm Aviva Klompus. Early this morning, the United States launched Operation Epic Fury, a joint American-Israeli campaign. In a video statement, President Trump made clear that the objective goes beyond degrading Iran's ballistic missile and nuclear capabilities. The operation is intended to open the door to regime change, and he called on the Iranian people to rise up. Now, events are unfolding rapidly, but it appears that several senior regime officials have already been eliminated. Iran has retaliated by firing ballistic missiles and drones toward Israel and at U.S. bases across the region. Sirens have been sounding across Israel all day, families are huddled in shelters, and civilian life has once again ground to a halt. And yet, many Israelis understand that this is the price to finally end the Iranian threat. Since its founding, the Islamic Republic has committed itself to Israel's destruction and been responsible for tens of thousands of Israeli lives. If this operation alters the trajectory of the past 4 decades, many believe the cost may be worth bearing. To give us insights into events on the ground, I'm joined by retired Lieutenant Colonel Jonathan Conricus. He's a former IDF spokesperson, a senior fellow at the Foundation for Defensive Democracies, and one of the clearest voices on Israeli defense. Let's get into it. Jonathan Conricus, welcome back to Boundless Insights.
It's been a while.
It has been. Before we start, how are you? How's your family?
Blessedly well, safe, in shelter in central Israel, and so far so good.
I'm glad to hear that. This has been a big day, and I know Israelis have been really waiting for a month now for this impending attack that finally happened. Give us a sense of what has been playing out all day and the scope of the operation.
Right, so started around 8 a.m. local Israeli time, a little bit before that, with Israel launching strikes, Israel and the U.S. together, launching aerial strikes from various platforms in the region against a variety of military and political targets in Iran.
I want to give you credit because when it first started, everybody was saying Israel started the attack. And you were the first that I saw to say, this is a joint operation, America's there also. And it took a little bit, but you were proven right.
Yeah, I mean, this is a classic How Not to Do Strategic Communications 101 by Minister Katz. He was eager to, get his name on it and say that Israel was striking. And therefore, the messaging to the Israeli public in Hebrew was Israel is now striking in Iran, when in fact it was a joint strike. And
from the very beginning.
From the very beginning, from the get-go, everything was coordinated ahead of time. The strikes were simultaneous. Israel went together with the U.S., and Israel and the U.S. actually divided different targets and according to location, capabilities, and munitions, and many other tactical military considerations. So it was extremely well coordinated, but it was done jointly. This is a joint U.S.-Israeli operation, not Israel attacking first and then the U.S. following, but jointly. The objective, and this is an important point, as per the two leaders, Trump and Netanyahu, the objective is regime change. Plain and simple. It is to overthrow the Iranian regime, to help the Iranian people reclaim their freedom. As per the IDF, a slightly more conservative goal of significantly degrading or hitting the Iranian regime. I don't know why the IDF would have a slightly different goal or a significantly different goal from what the government defines, but that is how it's been defined. Bottom line, I think it's pretty clear what we're talking about. For the first time in 47 years, the Iranian regime is now on the defensive after having done almost everything that they wanted in the region, after having been oppressing the Iranian people, after funding and arming terror organizations all over the region, after wreaking havoc in Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, Gaza, Yemen, some parts of Jordan, and many other places. Now, finally, Israel is kind of taking the initiative and bringing it home to Iran.
It's a stunning thing. When I heard President Trump's video announcement that he put out saying that the intention was regime change and that Iranians, be inside, it's dangerous, but then go out on the streets and take back your country. That is a stunning statement. And Reuters has reported that the commander of the IRGC and Iran's defense minister were assassinated in strikes this morning. And there's even rumors that Khamenei himself has been taken out.
Yeah, there's more than rumors. This is a preliminary assessment by Israel security officials that have said so, not yet confirmed, not yet final, but there's mounting positive indications that the so-called supreme leader, Ali Khamenei, indeed was either severely hit or in fact eliminated. Still waiting for confirmation, and that will obviously be the most important piece of news of this day. If that is true, that is a game changer, regional game changer of historic proportions. And of course, I hope that will happen because I think it will hasten the fall of the regime and it will hasten the ability for the Iranian people to reclaim their country and a lot of other regional things. What we're looking at so far in terms of Iranian response, missile fire as anticipated towards Israel, underwhelming missile fire, it should be said. I'm not taking any missiles lightly, especially not since I've been running in and out of bomb shelters all day. But the bottom line is that we did anticipate between dozens and hundreds of missiles to be fired almost simultaneously. They have not been. The Iranians have not been able to muster that.
But I do recall from the June attack that it was 24 hours before Iran got itself together and really launched the decisive attacks that managed to breach Israel's aerial defense.
Yes, but the situation now is a bit different, and the last day of the 12 days of Operation Rising Lion in June isn't really compatible, and Operation Roaring Lion, I think, is different because it started with a massive barrage on the missile launchers. The IDF has reported that it has hit and effectively struck dozens of missile launches in western Iran. That may be one of the reasons why the Iranians have not yet been able to fire at the quantity that we anticipated that they would. Or we could be in for a strategic surprise. Of course, very early in the game, and we have to be vigilant and conservative in our assessments. But by this stage, I was anticipating more missiles. I am surprised to see that the Iranian regime is lashing out and firing at Gulf states. We've seen Iranian missiles being fired at Jordan, Kuwait, Bahrain, Qatar, the UAE, and also Saudi Arabia. That is a surprise, with hits confirmed in Bahrain and Dubai and Abu Dhabi, which is a surprise. I thought that's something that the Iranians would preserve for later and more desperate stages. Maybe that is a testament to how desperate they are and the fact that they're failing really to make damage in Israel. They're trying to hit softer targets. Also, very important and not yet confirmed is what are the Iranian proxies in the region doing. Hezbollah in Lebanon has not yet committed to fighting. There's been explicit statements of warning by the Lebanese prime minister telling Hezbollah that they do not have the mandate to drag Lebanon into a war at the behest of Iran. So far, Hezbollah hasn't fired. If they do, that'll be a game-changing situation, and then Israel will have to defend itself and also strike various targets in Lebanon, and that could get very messy. The Houthis have not yet done anything significant, maybe fired drones, but not entirely sure that they have.
They put out a statement, say they intend to get involved.
Yeah.
And maybe tonight. So
which is kind of surprising, because usually they are the kind of terrorists that shoot first and talk later. And I am surprised that they haven't done anything meaningful so far. We have seen Iranian proxies, Kataib Hezbollah in Iraq, saying that they're going to attack American targets. We'll wait and see if that really materializes. But bottom line, so far, opening salvo with early positive assessment of achievements, massive strikes on various political and military facilities. Head of the IRGC, General Pakpour, reportedly eliminated, perhaps also the defense minister, perhaps Ali Khamenei, the supreme leader himself, various other senior military taken out, lots of missile launchers destroyed. And another point, which is also important, is a question about the Strait of Hormuz. We know that the Americans have targeted Iranian naval assets in the area significantly, both shore to sea missiles and the naval ports that the Iranian Navy will use. President Trump spoke about the fact that the Iranian Navy would be obliterated in order to keep the strait open. And so far, I haven't heard any reports of any significant events in the Strait of Hormuz and that the Iranians have been able to do anything important. A lot of moving parts, very interesting.
There's one other which needs to be mentioned, which is the Gaza front, which is that 3 years ago, Gaza would have been firing hundreds, if not thousands, of mortars and missiles, rockets at Israel, and now not even one so far. I hope it stays that way, but a testament to the IDF's degradation of Hamas and the terrorist organizations inside Gaza over the last 2+ years.
Yeah, they don't have a lot to say about what's going on because they've either run out of rockets or had a lot of their people killed, or the IDF has struck all of their rocket launches, and they're, I think, busy in a survival fight of their own, and they don't have a lot of energy and time to get part of Iran's war here. And it is ironic, there's a poetic justice here that the area from which the worst attack on Israel emanated from the Gaza Strip has now been decimated. Hamas has been really struck significantly, not enough and not yet totally defeated, but it has been significantly struck. And I agree with you. Had this been October, or let's say December or January 24, we would have seen lots of rockets fired from Gaza. They don't have that opportunity.
I hope from wherever Sinwar is burning in hell, he's being forced to watch on a jumbotron just what an absolute failure his life mission has become, because this may be the very beginning of the end.
Yeah, and I think that if Khamenei indeed was eliminated, maybe the last thought, as he was wounded perhaps and bleeding out, maybe his last thoughts went to Yahya Sinwar and cursing him for doing what he did and unleashing the positive powers of Israel to defend itself and really finally strike back at the evil empire of the Islamic Republic and turn the tides. October 7 was a horrible, dreadful, shameful day in our history, but we are now in a better position, militarily speaking, and if the situation continues as it's going, I think Israel will completely turn the tide and undo many years of Iranian indirect war fighting against Israel, and maybe, hopefully, the Iranian people will be able to reclaim their freedom.
So let's step back for a moment. I think many people believe that this time around, if there was to be military action, then Iran would have actually learned quite a lot from the June strike. They would have learned about their own capabilities, about targeting. Back in June, they got very close to hitting key Israeli infrastructure, including the Kiryat military headquarters in Tel Aviv. And the thought was they would adapt and do better this time. Now, we're still in under 24 hours. It could still happen. But is your assessment that actually Israel's intelligence is so sophisticated that whatever they were planning, we've one-upped them?
I think that Iranian capabilities were significantly degraded in Operation Rising Lion. I think Israel learned a lot, and any war is first and foremost a learning contest between two sides. Then it is about the kinetic capability to do so. Then there's the fighting spirit, the esprit de corps and will, and of course the weapons and allies and diplomacy and information and everything else. But the key components are first and foremost how well you're organized and how well you learn. I think Israel learned better in that sense, and really the competition is, when it's a full court play here. You produce defense by playing offense as well. What Israel is doing is probably effective offense in degrading Iranian missile capabilities, and that is what's making it possible to contain the Iranian fire better. But as you say, it's early, very early. At this stage, I thought that the Iranians would be able to fire more. But I always remind myself, the Iranians, they're
the ultimate paper tiger.
Yeah, that's the thing. They talk, tough talk, and they're happy to send others to die for them, usually Arabs, Palestinians, Lebanese, Syrians, Iraqis, Yemenites. We haven't seen them excel on the battlefield, and we've seen them underdeliver when it comes to actually defending their own assets and actually being effective as a combat organization. But I mean, it's a large country with significant resources, 90 million people. We should assess that, we should anticipate that there will be more significant responses. But so far, I think things are proceeding quite well from a U.S., Israeli, Iranian people regional perspective.
The last war lasted 12 days. Is there any indication of how long you expect this one to last, more or less time?
No, difficult to say, but what I think is important in terms of duration is that before the significant protest erupted in Iran, time perhaps was on the Iranian regime's side in a conflict, that there's pressure, domestic political pressure in the U.S., there's the amount of munitions, there's regional dynamics and many other things that the U.S. and Israel have to take into consideration. And then Iran could play for time and basically survive by just not losing. In this case, I think it's different because when the bombs will stop flying and exploding, then another a time bomb starts ticking for the Iranian regime, and that is what are the people going to do? And the Iranian people, I think, now will be emboldened, will be strengthened, and the president has now fulfilled his commitment. Help has arrived, and they will now most likely take to the streets and they will challenge the regime, whether Khamenei is alive or dead, whether there are other figureheads. Significant blows here to the regime, and I think it wouldn't be very useful for them to play for time as they've done in the past, which could have been useful. And that, I think, it will be important in terms of how long this will take and the amount of pressure that now will be applied on the regime.
I'm sure that's the hope, that it moves from this external pressure being provided by the United States and Israel to massive internal pressure provided by the Iranian people themselves. You mentioned this in passing, but there's also the question of the interceptor capacity. I know there were some concerns about Israel's stockpiles, particularly after the 12-day war in June. What is the status right now?
It is an issue of concern. Without going into specific numbers, I can say that it is concerning, and I would want us to have many, many, many more interceptors of all kinds, and I would want Israel to have many more aerial munitions. Wars are won by numbers. The Second World War was won by mostly American production capacity. And this war as well, I think, will eventually be decided, or it'll be very much influenced by the industrial capability to sustain operations. And I would want to have had more interceptors, whether it's Arrow or Patriots or THAAD, and of course air ordnance. But it looks as if the practices, the intel and the combat accuracy of the Israeli Air Force and American Air Force have been able to take out many of the launchers. They are the most crucial asset that the Iranians have, and they can have thousands of missiles, but if they don't have effective launchers that are capable of firing, then the missiles aren't going to be very useful, and then the amount of munitions we have in Israel, interceptors, etc., will be less of a constraint, and I hope that is the case.
Now, you also mentioned that Iran launched strikes against some of its neighbors. Do you think that any of those countries could get involved as well?
That would be a surprise, even though the Saudis and the UAE have quite a sizable air force. They definitely buy the most advanced tech that they can get their hands on. But the question will be, will they find the political will and leadership to actually defend themselves, defend their sovereignty? The Saudis said that they are going to lend the resources and participate in order to defend, something kind of vague-ish. Bottom line here, it's about having the will and the actual spirit to do what's necessary. And none of these countries have excelled at actually putting their money where their mouth is. So we'll have to wait and see. That would be an interesting development. I think the weaker the Iranian regime will be, the more exposed, the higher the likelihood that the Saudis or the Emiratis will join in, because then they won't have to fear the consequences so much.
As we've been recording, I've been getting alert after alert. There's now a siren across Tel Aviv. My last question for you is, ultimately, what does success look like, both from the perspective of the Americans and from the perspective of Israel?
Yeah, success is real. Ultimate success is the downfall of the regime. That's, I think, 100% what Israel and the U.S. are aiming for. Maybe something that's passable is a change within the regime and a complete strategic realignment of the priorities of the Iranian regime. To completely disassemble the nuclear weapons program, to stop funding terror organizations around the Middle East that are attacking Israel and the U.S., and to stop building missiles, ballistic missiles that are capable of striking Israel and Europe and maybe in the future the U.S. That maybe is enough, even though I think we would want to see the regime completely dismantled. But if there's internal change and they say, okay, we get it that the last 47 years have been a disaster in terms of our domestic and foreign policy, and we're going to change, and they actually take the measures, maybe that's enough. I wouldn't want that to be the case. I think this evil and horrible regime needs to be relegated to the dustbin of history, and the brave Iranian people deserve their freedom and their country back, and I hope that will be the end result.
Beautifully said. Jonathan, thank you so much for jumping on. Stay safe. Your family should stay safe. And there are so many of us around the world watching and praying for all of you.
Thank you, Aviva. Much appreciated.
That's a wrap on today's episode of Boundless Insights. Whether you've been with us from the start or are just discovering our show, we're so glad you're here. If today's conversation sparked a question, challenged your thinking, or made you shake your head, I want to hear from you. Email me at podcast@boundlessisrael.org. Your feedback gives us ideas for new topics and new guests. And if you believe these conversations matter, there are 3 ways to support the show. First, hit that follow button so you never miss an episode. Second, help us spread the word. Share an episode with friends and family, post about it, or mention it in a group chat. It really does make a difference. And third, consider supporting our work. Boundless is a nonprofit, and we rely on donors to keep the show going. You can make a gift at boundlessisrael.org/donate. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and keep the conversation going.